World-renowned human performance expert, executive coach, best-selling author.
And I want to congratulate Ron Kardashian.
Over 12,000 hours of one-on-one coaching and mentorship.
He's a health and cognitive expert.
Known as a spiritual confidant to respected industry leaders. CEO of 3 companies.
Coach and minister Ron Kardashian.
Good friend, Coach Ron Kardashian.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Always Winning in Leadership. I'm the host, Tim Boyko. I have with me the amazing executive coach, Ron Kardashian. And today's topic, the self-love advantage, the leadership trait that looks like weakness, but builds empires. Wow, that sounds powerful. I'll be back at the end to ask some questions and wrap things up. I'm excited to learn just like all of you. Take it away, Coach.
Thanks so much, Tim. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're listening to this broadcast. Powerful subject matter today, Tim. I'm really glad that you opened up with such enthusiasm because I want to dispel the narrative right away as I'm adjusting my screen here. I have some really powerful insights because over the years, coaching people. Now, you have to remember, I've been running an executive coaching company for 25 years. The number one investment that is accelerating people to the next level is not just their degrees. It's not just their grit and grind and hustle, which you should eliminate those words right out of your vocabulary. Hustle comes from the word hustler. It's not conducive to the integrity of someone who's trying to really build an empire. It's built on a different drive system. And it's important that you understand that. This is an understanding that disrupting the narrative, I was going to say, is most people think self-love creates narcissists. And science shows the opposite, Tim. What's powerful here, research from Stanford University, in fact, Christian Neef, I believe, Dr. Christian, it was powerful. She said that self-compassion, not self-esteem, self-compassion is what produces resilience, accountability, and emotional strength. And I can testify to this because, over the years, I dealt with so much shame, from the decisions that I made and the regrets and the way that I even treated people early on in my career. I wasn't the nicest guy. I admit that. I was arrogant and pompous and conceited and self-centered, you name it. Guilty. I'm always the first one to say I dined at Sin Saloon, But on the flip side of it, I didn't like that part of me, and neither did other people. So I did something about it. And here's what happened to me. Here's what happened to the hundreds of others that are in this program. Individuals high in self-compassion showed lower anxiety and depression. Huge. I was constantly in this flux of depression. I have 15 clients right now that I'm working with over the last couple of months. All of them were facing anxiety and depression. How did we do it? Self-compassion. Also increased higher motivation, Tim, and personal responsibility. So what happens to the brain is when you start taking personal responsibility for your own inferiority complexes or your own weaknesses, your own sin, however you want to call it, your own dysfunction, greater emotional regulation under pressure rises. All right? Narcissism says, I'm better than you. Love says, I'm accountable for me. And this was something my wife was trying to teach me for years, being a recovering addict. The addict is a master at manipulation because they're always hiding their disorder in some subconscious way. They don't want people to know this. And, I understand this. It's a horrible way to live. It actually decreases the 3 aspects of your frontal lobe that are critical for career development: focus, forethought, and deep intentionality. And this is important for you to understand because if you want to accelerate in your career, you as an entrepreneur, we got to get rid of the old narrative, the old story that's holding you back, the old shame, the guilt. How about guilt? I'm guilty as charged. I did this. I did wrong. I'm a hypocrite. I tell people one thing here, but on the inside, I'm living a different life. See that? And so self-compassion activates the parasympathetic nervous system. University of Wisconsin-Madison, I love them. They showed that When you initiate this part of your body, it is the gas pedal. It reduces the stress hormone cortisol. Now, most of you men, if you're getting this, what we call androids disease or the spare tire syndrome, could be primarily suffering from cortisol. I was working with a big CEO last night. He goes, man, my gut is inflamed 3-4 times, but I'm not even eating. Well, he's going through a very high stress moment in his family right now. And I said, look, that has nothing to do with your food or your self-discipline. Right now, you're under heavy cortisol load. Have some self-compassion on yourself. Because the brain will send a signal, Tim, to the body saying, you're bad, you're fat, you're ugly, you're this. And those narratives can be dispelled through our technique called cognitive replacement. We are actually replacing the thought because you have self-compassion. So when he walks into his boardroom, he's actually dealing with an inferiority complex that he's not attractive. He doesn't look good. His employees are thinking he's fat, he's overweight. Wow, he's really gotten big. His own self-thought is actually reducing his creativity. Unnecessary, right? The other thing that it does is it actually carries an elevated heart rate. And for those of you on high blood pressure or statins or beta blockers, or you're loading potassium right now to try to regulate heart pressure, which, by the way, potassium is one of the key components to heart regulation. A lot of, I'm on a high blood pressure medication myself, Losartan. Losartan actually binds with the receptor in the body that actually makes it think that your potassium is a lot higher. And I'm titrating off of it, working with a lot of, I'm working with my DO on this, but I'm also working with a lot of clients on this. As you know, my background is in strength and conditioning and kinesiology. So I'm not able to practice medicine, but I can suggest. Over the years, 30 years working with patients in weight loss and brain development and human performance and accelerating career biology, ladies and gentlemen. So understanding the role of potassium, heart rate variability increases with self-compassion. My blood pressure has actually come down, Tim, which is, we were just talking about this the other day, that now it's moved into hereditary fight, because a lot of people don't understand it. I'm eating organic. I'm on 200 milligrams of protein a day. I work out 5 to 7 days a week. What is going on? Hereditary pool. So you really have to create an aggressive, strategic, not fast protocol. And anything you do in life, if it's fast, it's not functional. You need to use speed at some time. So I'm not negating speed, but strategy outweighs it all the time, because you can think smarter and not harder, if that makes sense, right? When you treat yourself with patience, I had to write this down, your brain actually becomes smarter under pressure. Write that down. When I treat myself with patience, my brain actually becomes smarter under pressure. And that's why I keep saying my HFR principle. Now, this is a new framework that I am bringing before several doctors. 2 PhDs have already given their signature on it. I have it on tape, thank God. This HFR principle baselines in regulation before revelation. In other words, without self-love, no regulation. I can't calm myself down. I've moved into a place where God is such a high authority in my life. God is love. And I am understanding that love lives within me. So I'm basing my self-love off of the God of love who lives within me, whose not only attribute is love, but his essence, being, and intention is pure love. So without self-love, I'm not in self-recognition of the God that I serve. And if you're a spiritual person, this is groundbreaking, because what it does, it removes the lift of perfectionism inside you and says, thank you, for greater is he who's in me than he that's in the world, the issue that's in the world, the situation. And it recenters you, and this gives you what I call self-regulation. Because without regulation, there's no clarity. You have to get quiet long enough to love yourself. People that love themselves without that narcissistic interwovenness, we're talking about you owe me, that's the narcissist, right? Versus I'm accountable to myself. You're actually calming and bringing forth clarity and that creates advancement. That is the fullness to advancement because you're building self-confidence organically. Now, self-love is not ego, it's capacity. And capacity is massive. So let me dismantle this myth again, okay? Let's go Harvard. Harvard research on leadership, got it right here. In fact, it was leadership empathy, Tim. It shows that leaders with higher emotional regulation outperform peers in decision-making. Huge. They build stronger teams and are perceived as more trustworthy. Empathy. Now, this is a big one for me. I admit it. I said I had empathy. We were talking about this. I didn't. I thought I did. I had compassion because it was easy for me to relate to somebody that I had personally gone through myself. But if I hadn't gone through what they went through, then I was a little callous. I was like, come on, get over it. Come on, you got to be strong. We ain't got time. And I would bring money into the situation. If you've ever said, I don't got the luxury to be sick, and you're actually speaking that to a spouse, that's a form of abuse. No, it's not, Ron. Abuse is physical. No, it's not. It's very, very subtle forms of abuse because what you're saying is that you're not as good as me. And until you get to that place, you'll never be good enough. It's abusive. It's like hitting someone, beating them down, saying you're not good enough. Abuse is abnormal use in any capacity. And this is very difficult. Let me just put it on myself. When my first betrayal trauma specialist, I've done I think I've logged now about 110 hours of therapy, one-on-one coaching, just within the last several years, because I understand the power of having a coach. I mean, if you ever meet a coach that doesn't have a coach, get out. Tim, we've talked about this, that there's no accountability, there's no structure. And this is the highest ranking systems in Harvard, Oxford, Yale, University of London. It shows that the top producers all have one thing in common. They prize personal development within their top 5 core values. You got to have it in the top 5. And what it does is it's absolutely sharpened my ability to help other people because it gives me deeper insight into clinical research on how to overcome ailments. And at the hub of your career is your human performance. You can't perform higher than your highest thought. So if you're with somebody that's very progressive and they're gaining insights weekly into human development and they're pouring that into you, that's like having someone in your future telling you go this way, go that way, go this way. And that's why everybody is succeeding so powerfully. Yeah, we have about a 99% success rate. Everyone that comes in is getting it. Sometimes it goes over 100 because they'll tell someone else the techniques that we're teaching them and that person will get benefits and they're not even in the program. Tim, you've done that, right? You've carried it over into other spheres of influence. Now, this is powerful because the key distinction here, if you're going to make 2 charts, I would write down false self-love, ego, and then I would write down true self-love, regulated identity. So make 2 columns here. The first column needs validation. False self-love, ego. I'm constantly needing what we call approval addiction. Guilty, 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 guilty. Man, my wife used to tell me, she goes, every week you're always offended at somebody. She goes, you come in the house and you're dysregulated. Well, what was that doing? It was creating tension in the home. You know what I mean, Tim? I mean, think about it. Because my mood was off. Mood affects behavior because you're carrying things that are unnecessary to your outcome. You're carrying it. In therapy or in coaching, you release that. You release it every week. Oh, dear Lord, we need some more makeup in here. No, you don't have to come in. I hate it when I'm so passionate about this subject matter that my body has a visceral response because you know why? It's not because I teach this. It's because I live this and I'm guilty of it. And I want you to hear that coming from a professional because a lot of these people, they position themselves as, something unique and special. And, if you can't relate to anybody who's gone through something, why work with them? You know what I mean? So needing validation is something that I had to really wean myself off from. Now, in our coaching protocol, we have this unbelievable cognitive assessment. It's a behavioral intelligence platform to where it will read whether or not you are high in recognition. This is groundbreaking data because as soon as you see it on paper, you can make the changes. It's like getting their blood work done. If you haven't done that, I encourage everybody listening to go through the assessment. We're actually trying to find a way to give you a sample of it free. So make sure you go to thehigher.net and sign up at least to get, enrolled in it. We just need a general email. We'll send you a link. You take it and the data's there. You can progress higher if you want to do it. But this is so groundbreaking that the true self-love component in that column operates from identity, not validation. So in column 1 needs validation, column 2 operates from identity. Number 2, false self-love avoids failure. I hated failure. Hated it. Actually, it's an infrastructure system for safety, but it actually can bring contamination as well. The true self-love behavior learns from failure. So there's a slight distinction, but they're astronomical weights on the scale, if that makes sense. Number 3, defend self. Oh, Lord, guilty again. Constantly defending self. That's a form of deflecting. So if someone holds you accountable to someone and they say, well, you responded this way to me, and then you deflect and say, no, you responded. That's deflection. That's defending self. The antithesis, or the true self-love, the regulated identity, refines self. So instead of maybe saying you feel accused, now if they're wrong, you stand up for yourself. We're not trying to create passivity here. I'm creating internally confident, strong leadership assets. So make no mistake about it, stand your ground, stand for your crown. But on the flip side of it, to refine yourselves to say, tell me more about how you feel about that. Where you're not yet admitting it, because maybe you forgot, right? Because in the heat of the moment, we say things and we forget about them, and people are right. They'll say, well, I remember it, but you don't, because in a heightened state, cerebral function drops down and creativity drops. So you forgot what you created in your brain, but you spoke it anyway. Happened to me all the time. So the refinement process is, tell me more about how that made you feel. Let them pull out the emotion behind it, because that's what's driving their comment. And then you can say, I apologize on how that made you feel, versus saying, I said that. Does that make sense? Because the feeling is real for them, regardless if you said it or not. You may have said it a different way, but they felt it the way they spoke it. Huge understanding of perspective. Okay, and number 4, big one. False self-love is self-centered. Self-centered. Self-centeredness, right? True self-love is other-aware. That I'm constantly in a state of, how is my behavior going to affect that person? Now, you practice this on the road. You practice this when you drive into the office, You practice this as you're taking your little guy to the soccer game or the football game or the tennis club or the gym, or your club. There's a big one for you IN listeners, right? And when you get in that club, right, you see ostentatiousness everywhere. But if you will center yourself in staying self-centered, your ego protects an image, but self-love builds a person. This is the epitome of optimizing human performance. Okay. Copy that, Tim? We're going to wrap up pretty soon here because I want to leave some time for Tim to give me some questions. Now, there's a tension that I want to address that creates greatness. Right? There's a tension that creates greatness. True self-love lives in tension. It's got strength in one hand, frailty in the other. It's called humility. Now, this is backed by research. University of California studies on psychology. Let me pull that up. Psychological flexibility. Psychological flexibility, Tim, shows the highest performers hold dual awareness. Confidence in ability, awareness of limitation. I mean, who of us thinks that we're perfect anyways? That's the fullness of narcissism, right? I got this. I can do it. I'm the only person. I. Interesting that the initial of sin is I. S-I-N, I. When I saw this study, I said to myself, psychological flexibility. Is my mind flexible enough to adapt between these two worlds as a high performer? I'm talking to you as a high performer. Most of my clients do think this way. Now, you don't need to be a high performer. Actually, I have some students that recently enrolled in my program. They're Division I college athletes. They're not high performers yet. They want to become one. So if you want to become something and somebody has a mastery in it, that's why you engage coaching, right? That's why in the NFL, when they come in, they make these athletes into superstars. It's because they have these powerful coaches who are thinking at a high performance, high octane level. As you submit to, you become. Make no mistake about it. Birds of a feather flock together. Remember mama and daddy telling us that? This is epigenetics. This is powerful stuff. So when they started to reveal this psychological flexibility, I was like, wow, confidence and ability in one hand, awareness of limitation in the other. Just awareness. Just the fact that you are aware that you have limitation is actually keeping you on the side of confidence in your ability. Now, what does it create? It creates three things: adaptability, empathy, and long-term success. And it's important that you understand these things. Remember, at the very beginning, I'm always coaching beliefs create a behavior. Beliefs create behavioral change. My new book, The Mind of Christ, Neurotheological Study on the deepest dimension of this psychological transformation. I mean, Christ was the most regulated human being on the planet. No greater role model, right? In my heart, you know. But it's important for us to understand that people who are on the quest of higher achievement, higher diagnostic, higher levels of living, temporal realm knowledge is one thing. But when you start diving into the spirit realm, you're operating on a whole other level. This is where the law of attraction did billions of dollars. It's because they introduced a concept that was way out of this world. It's like, what do you mean? I can actually will something and it can be? Absolutely. And in fact, it starts in the will. That's the soul. Mind, will. Emotion is the soul. Mind, will, motion. So the more you regulate this, right? Or let me say it like this on this subject. The moment you lose your awareness of frailty, the internal structure of you, you lose your connection to people. Because everybody's dealing with a frailty, but if you've got a superiority narcissistic mindset, not even narcissistic, let's leave that word out because it's way overused. And by the way, if somebody has called you that, maybe as a child or in therapy, or they've used that word and you've looked it up and you go, oh my God, no way. And there are traits of narcissism, not actual full narcissism. I had those traits, but I was not a narcissist. They're very, very, very deeply, deeply wounded. I use the word wound because sometimes it wasn't their fault, the way they become like that. So the moment you lose your awareness of frailty, you lose that connection to people. And that's what you want as a leader. This is where empathy is born. Okay, let me wrap up with empathy. Time, 23 minutes. I'll finish in 2. This is the Career Accelerator, Tim. Now, data back, let me give you 2 things. Empathy is the Career Accelerator. Center for Leadership, Creative Leadership. Empathetic leaders outperform peers 40% in people engagement, Tim. Empathetic leaders, 40%. I was coaching a CPA last night. I said, imagine if I came to you and showed you here my investment did 40% last year, would that be impressive? He goes, yeah, well, CDs are 3 to 5%, good investment 20, but you did 40. Empathetic leadership, 40% people engagement. Google Project Aristotle stated the number 1 factor in high performing teams, psychological safety. People trust you. And what creates safety? Leaders who understand their own humanity. You can't extend patience to others if you haven't learned it with yourself. You cannot extend patience to others if you haven't learned it with yourself. So I leave you with this. Be patient with you. Love takes time to love you. It takes time to learn to love yourself. Self-love in career looks like not overreacting under pressure, not trying to identify, too many outcomes at once, making clear decisions without emotional folding, leading people without needing their approval. Emotional regulation directly correlates with promotion, ladies and gentlemen. Leadership readiness, executive presence. That's not me. That's Stanford University's insight. Your career will never outgrow your internal regulation. So take it to the next level this week. Learn to love you gently, kindly, and understand those two worlds. On one hand, I'm completely filled with power. Greatness is in me. On the other side, I must exercise humility because there is a frailty in me that I've got to be sensitive of. Those two come together, you're off to a whole other level. Tim?
This is really great, Coach. Very, very powerful things here.
Am I giving too much away here on this?
I want to tie in a couple of concepts that we talk about in corporate America. And because I want to tie some things together. You approach it from language of a coach.
Yeah.
And I think to help resonate with our business leaders, we hear terms like hero syndrome or the fireman syndrome, the person that the leader always goes to that person because whenever there's an issue, whenever there's a problem, they go to them because they know they'll put it out regardless of anything else. Is that really healthy? Is that tying more to the false self-love style leadership coming out of the person? Or
No,
is
that's a
that
good point. Yeah. Or is that what?
or is that the true love? Because they're
Well, I mean,
sacrificing as the fire as the hero.
Yeah, the hero syndrome is, if I'm correct, if I don't do it, it won't get done right.
Right.
Is that what you're referring to?
Correct. Or the
Be-
fireman.
because
like,
it-
I'm the only one that can save the team.
Yeah. This is a very applicable behavioral trait in CEOs specifically, right? So what's underneath that is there's an identity tied to being needed. I pulled this up right now as you were talking. There's a fear of losing relevance of control, right? So at the hub of that is fear. It's not self-love. Self-love has this internal regulator in it that says, I may not have all the answers, but I'm going to find out how to not only understand this area better, but how to delegate it better. Because true leadership is about empowerment. So Harvard Business Review, this stat just came up. Thanks for giving me this to you, giving me this. Leaders who overfunction reduce team performance and create dependency loops. So in essence, in one hand, you're taking responsibility, but in the other hand, you're creating these loops.
So for
that
the
makes sense.
leader, correct. So for the leader, make sure that you're empowering multiple people on your team to solve things. Don't always keep going to the same person. It's
Exactly.
not healthy for yourself, and it's also not healthy for that individual.
You know what it does? It gives you a badge. It's called the exhaustion badge.
Yeah, that's for sure. The other thing, you had several things, but I know we have a limit on time. But I wanted to go back to helping people understand and seeing one in themselves, but also in the people that they work with, because a lot of the things you were describing is happening every day in every team all across corporate America. And so all of these dysfunctions that happen in companies due to the fact that probably realistically we're a little bit of blend of false self-love with a little bit of true self-love, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
And so how does one go about, and a lot of times we're not aware of our own actions. When we're doing peer reviews, when we're receiving feedback, what are the type of words, comments, actions people might do toward us that might be an indicator to me to be like, wait a minute, maybe I'm not operating in true self-love?
Subtle subconscious communication is often expressed through HR departments as you may want to consider, doing some executive presence coaching. You may want to take a few class on personality development. They very often say things like, we have reports that your behavior is rude, but they may be bold enough to say we're having reports about leadership behavior. Anytime they bring in the word behavior, it's a behavioral issue, unless because they won't say it in a positive way. However, what is more powerful than what the HR or the lead says to you is your response, where you're having that concept of self-love, that I take accountability for me, versus deflecting and saying, well, the department's not getting anything done and that's deflection. They already know all that. We feel a need to justify our own behavior to protect our identity, because reputation management is $1 billion empire. I get it. I've done it. However, humility precedes honor. So the response should be, what are 3 areas where I can become a better leader for this organization? Period. And then you give them permission to speak freely, because they don't want to offend you, to then potentially encounter a lawsuit, because they're also walking on eggshells on how they articulate. This is EEOC compliant regulation. So know that both sides are using sensitivity, but you as the leader take the lead position.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are at time here. So any final thoughts as we close this episode?
Dare to be great within by giving yourself permission to love you, by being patient with yourself, gentle with your shortcomings, but optimal in your thinking processes. Know that nothing is impossible for them that believe. I'm Coach Ron Kardashian. This is why we're always winning. We're constantly rewiring, refiring to go higher. Tim Boyko, my co-host, awesome as usual. Till next week, keep winning.